let's have a look at the confirmed closure of Newshub.
Good evening. It's the end of the news as we know it. In a meeting with staff this morning, Three's owners, Warner Brothers Discovery, confirmed the closure of our news service, Newshub, with the loss of nearly 300 jobs and more than half of them from the news team.
Our last bulletin's been inked for Friday, July the 5th, after which the media landscape will be dramatically different, with TVNZ today confirming the cancellation of its current affairs program Sunday. Laura Tupou has the story.
Media addressing the media after confirmation of the worst for Warner Brothers Discovery employees. 150 of those roles are from news.
Companies come and go, but it's he tangata, it's the people who...
Yeah, companies come and go, but 35 years of news broadcasting in a country with only really one other television news option. It's more than just a company, and I know Mike's talking about the people, which is right because he's a part of it, but for the rest of the country, this isn't just a company. This is a keyhole into news dissemination and into the political world and into... So yeah, this is not just a company. Whether you love them or hate them or you think they're biased or whatever it is, no matter what, it's still a place for New Zealanders to have news disseminated to them. And we are going to be left with one news outlet. And for the people who have been dancing on the graves of Newshub today, I got to say, you should now be more concerned than ever. And I'm not saying this is going to happen, but how much less does TVNZ now have to put into things seeing they have no competition? Like, having the competition is one of the things that keeps people honest. Not having the competition means that an entity, and I won't say TVNZ because I wouldn't expect them to do this, but if you don't have the competition, then that gives an entity not necessarily the pushback and the drive, and all of a sudden the remaining media company doesn't have to go as hard after a story because they've got no competition. You know, it's a really, 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 really bad, not just sad, but bad day for New Zealand and the democracy we are, Chewy.
Yeah, you don't have to chase the scoop if no one's going to scoop you.
Yeah, exactly. So the scoop can go down to the, oh gosh, imagine the resource we have to put into that scoop. We happen to be in that area next week. Let's just cover it then. We'll just cover it next week because we're going to be in the area. Yeah, it's a travesty. And of course, there's the TVNZ cutbacks as well, which we'll probably get to tonight as well. Let's just have a bit more of a listen from Mike McRoberts.
Create the legacy and carry the legacy. That's what I'm really going to miss.
Even people that have only recently worked at Newshub, I think, feel part of the family. And that's what's going to get us through, isn't it?
The initial proposal put to staff 6 weeks ago was largely unchanged, save 10 roles that will join the 110 that will remain to ensure the television channel and 3Now apps continue. There have been reports recently that a Newshub news program could be made by another company, but played on 3.
Conversations are ongoing. I do not have any conclusion to share, but those conversations are ongoing.
But there is appetite out there for someone to fill this space.
Yes, I believe there is.
There was also a proposal from a group of senior journalists to save the 6 p.m. bulletin for an interim period while transitioning to a digital news offering, but it was rejected.
The problem with it, so last night we talked a bit about why the media is less trusted today than perhaps years gone past. And a lot of it has to do with the kind of the questioning that started with Donald Trump, directly with Donald Trump, that went around America and then around the world with people left in the countries like in New Zealand who would be in that part of the political spectrum. And I read an interesting piece about NPR today. Some people sent it to me on my Twitter feed. And NPR is struggling and NPR is worried, which is the public broadcaster in America. And they cite 3 particular news stories. They cite Russiagate, where Democratic senators were led on NPR and unchallenged with how much evidence there was for Russiagate. And when the Mueller report came out, there basically wasn't any evidence. That was step 1. Step 2 was Hunter Biden's laptop. Whilst it doesn't have anything necessarily to do with Joe Biden, it was still a story. You know, if it was Eric Trump Jr., they would have been all over it. And the media basically, well, NPR and the news media basically said, we're not going to chase this. And the third story they pointed to was the Wuhan lab leak theory, where epidemiologists very, very early on were saying this could well have come from the leak. And then we all know this turned into if you say that on YouTube, you'll be demonetized and banned. If you say it on Twitter, you'll be kicked off. And those three stories are highlighted by this report looking into NPR as hey, you got that wrong. Hey, you got that wrong. Hey, you got that wrong. I don't trust you. Just like that. Bam, 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 gone. And of course, those are three American stories, but, there are MAGA people or MAGA aligned people or people who would sit in that political world in New Zealand. And even if we haven't seen those stories impact us, when America sneezes, the world catches a cold. So there's been that influence. And then there's been some very, and when I say good, I mean well orchestrated attacks on things like Three Waters, here in New Zealand that have then added to that. And then, of course, add in the vaccine mandates and the Wellington. All of those things together are this perfect storm. And where the media has a part to play is how they reported some of those things. And as we said last night, how they've lost relationship with their audience. One of the reasons that independent media is going off all over the world, even independent media on the right, is we love you guys and we speak to you guys every night. We have a relationship with you. We literally invite you to our homes and we talk to you on Saturday morning one-on-one and we hear what you've got to say. The mainstream media has become aloof and they've become removed from their audience. I worked with Paul Holmes. I remember stories about Paul Holmes turning up to small town New Zealand on a Friday afternoon to do a Friday night home show, and everyone would come to town and meet him, and he would fucking shake every one of their hands. I was a nobody, well, I still am, but on News Talk ZB, I was bottom of the barrel. And I'd get in the elevator at 6 a.m. to come home, and Holmesy would get in the elevator at 6 a.m. to go down for his last cigarette before the show started. And he'd look at me and he'd go, "So Pat, what are they talking about?" He wasn't being nice. He wanted to know what the public was talking about. He wanted to get a feel of his audience because he had a relationship with them. Who can you name in the media today that is anything like that? Someone in the chat says John Campbell. Maybe the only one, Chile.
Yeah, that's immediately who my mind went to. And, he's not doing news. Good on him. He's doing his own projects and his own very, very good projects.
Yeah.
But, Campbell Live is not around anymore. I see a comment in the chat there, we're just talking about normal news, right? But this is a devastating blow for news gathering. Like, something happens in this country, who's going to cover it? Is there going to be a reporter there? Is there going to be enough reporters there? Are we going to be able to get cameras there? All of those sort of things. These are the flow-on effects, and it's just like once it's gone, it's so hard to rebuild.
Yeah,
I think this is one of those things that we're going to be looking back on years down the track if something's not done, and go, "Oh Jesus, that was where it got a lot worse."
Yeah. And the other thing I was going to say about the reason I stopped this video, when they said they put a proposal forward for a digital first, that should have been 10 years ago. Like, this is the thing in New Zealand media.
Yeah.
I've told you guys this before. Chewy and I, right, and me on my own sometimes have had conversations with people quite high up in lots of media places who have said to us, right, that we, meaning what we're doing here, is ahead of the curve. That we are mirroring what's happening in America with digital media, and then we get told by this individual in particular that New Zealand is 5 years behind America, which means what happened in America 5 years ago, which was that everyone's starting to look digitally, hasn't happened in New Zealand yet. So Newshub's responsibility in this is that they did not do this 10 years ago, go digital more heavily, other than going, because television stations, same as radio stations, they don't get it. They think, well, if I film a news show and then I slap that news show on the internet, that's going digital. It's not. If I make a radio show and then I just put that radio show on the internet, that's going digital. It's not. It's a very, very, very different skill set, and it's a very different style. And hello, team, you're a very different audience. So yeah, so Newshub has a responsibility here as to their shutting down, as does other factions as well. And it's not all on them, but the mainstream media does have a responsibility through decisions that they haven't made as to where they are today. Fair enough, Chewie. I mean, I don't know. I'm not dancing on their grave. I'm just saying, in general, the observation is they do have a part to play in this as well. It's not just all, they couldn't see this coming, because they could have. I mean, pre-pandemic, dozens of news agencies were lost all over the world. This is 4 to 5 years later, or 4 years later, and they really haven't advanced any further. They had a role to play in their downfall. That's all. We keep going?
Yep.
We're deeply disappointed that this has ultimately been unsuccessful, but as you've seen today, the company has told us that it could not see a path to profitability with the model. It was unwilling to sustain any further losses.
Because it wasn't able to address the issue, we didn't get an approval, and therefore we weren't able to proceed.
So the feedback was there is no pathway to profitability, therefore we reject this.
Yeah.
Advertising revenue was down $100 million over the past 2 years and $74 million in 2023 alone. James Gibbons says Warner Brothers Discovery doesn't go to any government to solve business issues, but market reform is desperately needed. The minister has no immediate answers.
I don't think I can actually say anything. I'm trying to be who I am. I'm the minister.
Can I just say, Minister, the giggle and the laugh in the middle of this, if I was a Newshub person just losing my job, I'd be pretty offended as to your tone. And then to say, I'm just trying to be who I am, like you're a person who's going, guys, I just got to be me. It's like a former broadcaster, as we keep getting told, missing the mark that much in commentary to the news agency that has just fallen over. All I want to say is, you have missed the mark, Minister. You have missed the mark with your comments.
She's a broadcasting minister.
Yeah. Well, communication.
Like, it's the biggest thing that's happened in broadcasting, straight out of the gates. And that's what she can muster. That is piss poor.
Desperately needed. The minister has no immediate answers.
I don't think I can actually say anything. I'm trying to be who I am. I'm the Minister for Media and Communications, and what I can do is actually provide a level playing field for the media so that they can be more sustainable, modernise and innovate.
Media commentator and former TV3 News boss Mark Jennings believes a locally owned business could take over and would probably be a better fit than a global company.
To be honest, they don't really care about New Zealand. It's really about the bottom line. And this place has been losing too much money for them. And someone in Park Avenue in New York has gone, we're not having that anymore.
And for the finality today that they're going to go ahead with their plans to shut everything down is it's terrible. It's an awful feeling. And I just feel exhausted, actually, and empty. Yep, got a story coming up on Newshub Live at 6, so you can tune in for that one.
That one and plenty more until July 5th, when our final news bulletin will air. Before we, like our employer Warner Brothers Discovery, will close the door on this chapter of New Zealand's media history.
It was interesting that she used the phrase "we," because there's that thing that if there's this adage in media that if you're reporting on yourself, something's gone wrong. TV3 is talking about TV3, then there's an issue at TV3. I'm going to let the end of this play. We normally cut it there because I think they talk a little bit about Sunday, and then I'm going to show you Sunday, and then we'll have a chat.
I couldn't smell it.
Our colleague Laura joins us now. Kia ora, Laura. TVNZ also confirmed more job losses today.
That's right, Mike. TVNZ confirmed the cancellation of its current affairs program Sunday, with the last show going to air on the 19th of May. It also confirmed that their re-news team would be reduced from 10 staff to 6 staff. This, of course, comes a day after confirmation its midday bulletin and its tonight bulletin will stop, and its Fair Go program will move off air to a more digital platform. Newshub understands that those teams, Fair Go and Sunday, they'll be looking for 4 roles within those teams, coming from those teams I should say, 2 journalists, an editor and a producer. Now, many employees at TVNZ are part of unions, and one of those main unions is Air2, and a spokesperson, Michael Wood for Air2, has confirmed today that they will be pursuing legal action against TVNZ. They say the company didn't follow its consultation requirements. Under their collective agreement, workers must be involved in developing proposals proposals like this, not just ask for their views at the end of the process.
There you go. So, Chewy, happy for you to. What are your thoughts, my friend? What are you thinking?
Oh, I don't know if I've got too much more to add than what I've already said. Like, just sitting there, just hearing the numbers of how many people are being made redundant, and if you just think in the last month, the massive redundancies that have been announced, obviously. Yeah. In the public service and that sort of thing. There was a story today about Doc cutting 100 workers. There's a lot of people that are out on their ear, and this is something that we were talking about last year as the government, the now government, ramped up its rhetoric against people being potentially unemployed, potentially on job seeker, and all of that sort of thing, that they've got to make it tougher and that sort of thing. And I remember thinking then, cool, you're making it tough now at a time of record low unemployment, knowing that your policies are going to see more people potentially having to avail themselves of that service. It's like baiting a trap.
Yeah, it's not just even their policies. We all know, economically speaking, for one of the things that will help inflation is more unemployed people. And so at a time where they're actively going to, as you said, make policies, and we know that the unemployment numbers are going to go up, they're also talking about cracking down on unemployment and unemployed people. Could you imagine any of these journalists? Because this is the other thing, right? Like when Today FM folded, we sat here in these in our mother's basements, Chewy, and we said, Tova will be fine.
Yeah.
The presenters will be fine. Lloyd Burr will be fine. Lloyd Burr is on TV3 within days. Then this year it was announced he was the co-host of the breakfast show, the AM show. Tova is at stuff, doing a whole bunch of stuff. Now, that's because the reason I said those, and it's not to say that the other people at Today FM were any less valued. They weren't. But generally the talent ends up being the ones that are pretty much okay. One of the reasons for that is there's been quite a big media landscape in New Zealand for quite a long time. Now you've got, think about the people on the billboards. Where are they going to go? What are they going to do? There's only TVNZ to go to, or I guess there's radio to go to, or I guess there's, if you're a pure journalist, you can get into writing. You might end up seeing all these people really being PR people in the beehive. That's where often a lot of ex-journalists kind of go to, PR and advisory roles and that sort of thing. But this is... Yeah, I kind of came into radio after networking started. Networking meaning you can do a show in Christchurch and it goes out to the regions, but it wasn't really heavily done. So the breakfast show on News Talk ZB went through the country. The breakfast show on ZM went through the country. The breakfast show on then Classic Hits went through the country, other than some regions where they broke out and did it locally. I was in Tauranga and there was a local show, and here in Dunedin, there's still a local show for the hits. Yeah, and they've done very well. Christchurch had a local show, but there was still a network element. And then what happened was COVID hit, and a whole bunch of those smaller localized shows got the chop because there wasn't any. No, sorry, what am I talking about? The global financial crisis, 2008. I was in the wrong worldwide event. It's 2008. And then there was no money, no advertising. Everyone was going broke. So, a whole bunch of those local shows got broken down. So it used to be, for example, ZB, 1 ZB, 2 ZB, 3 ZB, 4 ZB, Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch, Dunedin. And then it became mostly out of Auckland, some Wellington, some Christchurch. And then it kind of became all out of Auckland. So, and now we're at this point now where in radio it's networking, but in TV, I guess it's the number of positions available has gone from being sort of a newsroom in every centre, feeding local news and getting fed national news, to a newsroom perhaps in the North Island and maybe in Auckland and Wellington, and maybe one in the South Island doing everything. And so how well people are going to get fed the news from here on in, like, I don't even know if there's going to be, any particular... I can see they're advertising NZME, which is ZB, for a journalist in Dunedin at the moment, but maybe there's one. Maybe there's one radio journalist that feeds Dunedin and all of Otago. Maybe there's 2 or 3 and does Christchurch, but that actually does all of Canterbury. Whereas before there would have been a full newsroom in each of those centres, and we're just getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller because of technology. And now we're getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller because of redundancies, Chewy.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I remember doing some work experience stuff in the local Dunedin newsroom. They had a reporter, he had a team, they had a camera crew, that sort of thing. Something happened in Dunedin, they could have someone on the spot within a matter of minutes. If something happened in Otago, they weren't that far away. And it was the same in Canterbury and all of that sort of stuff. But now, like, do you remember that stabbing at Countdown down here a few years back?
Yep.
And there was one network that had the reporter standing in the Countdown car park here in Dunedin, and you could tell because they had the ODT background and the Cadbury's building in the background. It was very obvious that they were in Dunedin. The other network, and I forget which way round it was, the other network had a reporter standing in the Countdown car park in Christchurch.
Yeah,
you're doing a live cross from the wrong supermarket.
Yeah,
like that's just weird.
There is a little bit of background to that. I still agree with what you're saying, but that one particular incident, that reporter who was standing in Christchurch had just been employed to come to Dunedin, but they were in a transitional stage. But that still means at that time they didn't have someone in Dunedin, so they still didn't have a.
I was unaware of that, but I remember seeing it and going.
No, but they didn't. But
really
your point still stands. What there was no one in Dunedin to cover that live. I mean, forget even Dunedin. Hang on. Never forget Dunedin, but forget Dunedin, forget Wellington, forget Auckland, forget Christchurch, maybe even Tauranga, Hokitika. There's a storm this weekend. There's massive melees over there. There's very few local ones. Let me tell you this as well. It's funny what you remember when you're talking. I, for a long time here in Dunedin, so I've been in Dunedin for 10 years, and I've done work for the ODT, and I've done work for Media Works down here, on and off, and I remember putting a proposal for there was a radio show, a drive show going on Radio Dunedin that I applied for. And I put a proposal together that says, why don't we utilise the ODT newsroom? Why don't we, because we don't have the resources in this building to do it, why don't we do a deal with the ODT that no money has to change hands because it's we're promoting their product, yada, yada. And why don't we do some business crossing over and actually come together and get a newsroom, and to make our product better and to give them more exposure for their product as well, and actually, bring it together. This country forevermore has been really, I don't know what the word is, but it's when you choose to isolationary, whatever it is. With our businesses. So you watch America and you watch a David Letterman show or a Jimmy Kimmel or whatever, and they're on ABC and they have on people from CBS talking about their latest show, from HBO talking about their latest. They're not like mine. But in New Zealand, you never would see an interview on TVNZ from a TV3 star talking about their TV3 content. I've been saying this to managers for 20 years. It's like one of the things I talked about when we've talked to some people about this show was the only way we could work with any of you guys is if you didn't put any restrictions on us. If we went to company X, I wouldn't sign anything with you if you said we can't talk to company Y. One of the beauties of the independence we have here is we talk to who we want, when we want, how the fuck we want. But I think also the New Zealand media, mainstream media, has missed a trick in being so isolationist. That'll do. Isolationist. By not drawing on content from other providers. Content is content. If I speak to someone from an opposing brand and that gets eyeballs and earballs on me and my product and my advertisers, why would I care? But we don't. We've got this isolationist theory in New Zealand when it comes to media, and I think it's detrimental. And that could be one of dozens of reasons the New Zealand media landscape hasn't been as successful as it could have been.
Yeah, I don't know what the answer is. I mean, certainly when I was in radio, wanting to be in that career, and that was when the things were condensing down into that network fashion, and the writing on the wall there was like, well, are they going to give? There's just less shows to go around, right? You can't earn your stripes doing a late night show when there's one late night show and it's coming out of Auckland because it's cheaper, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I remember at that point of like, well, it's time to do DIY. We, like, me and some other graduates set up our own radio station, which we ran for 5 years here in Dunedin. And that was, again, I think the curse of being too early. You know, if that had been 7 years later, it'd be a podcast or something like that. But we were doing low power FM station, and we were coming up then with ideas of maybe there's some way we can stream this on the internet to another place that would rebroadcast it, and we'd spin up our own little pirate radio network. We were trying to mimic the big boys there.
Yeah.
And you know, I think we're kind of in a similar place here, where we want to talk about news and we want to give a point of view that perhaps isn't reflected or is just an alternative point of view that we're not seeing in that stripe. And now we have less resources to draw on because you know that other half of our media landscape is fucking gone.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
You know, and when people would talk about the Radio New Zealand TVNZ merger, you know, like it was a bad thing. This is one of the things, is that was supposed to solidify those two institutions, to cut costs, to cement that into the media landscape of New Zealand, and you know, people got cold feet. It was put in the too hard basket, or you know, all of the opinions on that move, and now we don't have it, and it's not going to happen.
But remember, Chewy, landlords get $3 billion.
It's true, and I am super happy for those guys.
And this is another situation where, you know, successive governments have contributed to this as well. We've been saying, well, I guess we've been doing this for 2.5 years on and off sort of thing. This show, we've been saying it since the conversations happened about the merger, that TV1 should be ad-free. That would send all that revenue to TV3. TV2 can still have a crack, Prime TV. Those places would then be the places for advertising dollars to go. And that could have been another, you know, that game where you put all those sticks in and you pull one out at a time? That was another one of the sticks, you know. I also want to put up what Mariama Kamo put out today, which is the statement from Sunday. It's just on Twitter. Mari says, no words, but here's a few. The Sunday team was informed today that a proposal to cancel the show will go ahead. We were told, I just think this is such a fucking nasty way to do it as well, because TVNZ had all these announcements yesterday, and then they went, we'll talk to Sunday tomorrow. Surely you've kind of gone, oh, well, we're probably not in the cancellation. Probably the head's not on the chopping board, or else they would have just told us today. But no, 24 hours later, they told them this. Told the company can no longer afford to produce it, and our last program will end mid-May. We're all gutted, not just for the loss of our jobs, but for the loss of a special part of the news landscape in Aotearoa. They gave New Zealanders a voice for more than 20 years. Here's the thing, right, Chewy? You'll be able to speak to this. I'll ask you, we know we don't do this, because if I'm seeking an answer, when I was studying to teach, they said never ask a question if you're looking for a particular answer. It's called fishing. But I'm going to ask you a question, Jerry, that I have an answer for, but I think you will as well, because you know more of the stuff.
Yeah.
If we decided to start up a full-on Air Force today with a whole bunch of jets, could we do it? And if we couldn't, why not?
Oh, okay. If we do, yeah, okay. So
if the government purchased a whole bunch of new jets, what would be the reason we wouldn't be able to start that up tomorrow?
Well, there's the upfront cost. And then there's the fact that you have to train the people to fly them.
Bingo.
So there's a lead term on that, and maintenance.
Because when they mothballed is it the Skyhawks?
Yeah.
Whole bunch of that talent went offshore. Whole bunch of those pilots left and were gone. Once you mothball Sunday, whole bunch of the talent is gone. The resources are gone, the equipment's gone, the capital's gone. And it's really hard to start up again. And this is the problem with these sorts of things. TVNZ have told us that they want to reimagine current affairs with a smaller digital offering. But Sunday, as we know it, will end. As Mariama Kamo says each week, thanks for watching. Ngā mihi nui, hei kona. So, yeah, and that's the problem. Same for TV3, because all of the sets, all of the desks, all of the equipment, most of the cameras, gone. And you know what? When I was working for ODT, we actually bought one of TV3's desks. they will go. They will be sold off to smaller agencies. That was one. So we bought one down from Auckland to ODT. Those will go. They won't have the physical assets anymore. And then what you're going to need if you want to start anything else up again is probably a 10, maybe $20 million injection. And who's going to do that for news in this day and age?
Yeah. No, we're poorer because of this, and like there's people crying about it now, but they're unhinged and very short-sighted, I think.